Greetings, everyone. Let me lock this in. Get my angle set just right. Right-ish. Yeah, close enough. So, today, as I've been on this traditional knife kick that you've seen me on lately, I got my Buck 112 Ranger, which just went live. Well, I did it yesterday and I forgot to post it, so it's now posted. And like it a lot. It's like a really good size. It's got a bunch of good heft to it. It's a good feeling, heavy duty but small knife. Little on the thick side. So I was like, well, what other knives can I find that are basically about that length? Maybe a tiny bit longer, but just basically right in there, but maybe not so thick around the middle. While that is a very nice, comfortable grip, it does make it a little bit weighty in the pocket. This is like a 6-ounce knife, so not a featherweight by any means. So I'm trying a brand I've known about for a long time, but never actually owned a Puma knife. So I got the SGB Whitetail Stag. They always profess, German steel, German steel. I have a feeling that the knife is made in China or somewhere. They take the steel, ship it over from Germany, and then make the knives over there, maybe to save on labor costs. These do go for about $105 on Amazon, so it's not a cheap knife. So I'm hoping that I'm not disappointed. We're going to find out together. I've not opened this. I have not handled out. My buddy Shane growing up, he had a Puma folding knife. He had that, and he had some kind of, it was a Kershaw. Almost looked like the Gerber Gator, where it had the rubberized handle with the finger grooves. He had a Kershaw. I don't think they make that model anymore. And I'm almost positive he had a Puma. And I know Puma has a very rich history. They've been around a long time. But let's see if the new one kind of holds up, or if they've dropped the ball or anything like that. So I will say already, I do like it that it's thinner. We'll see how it compares to the Buck 112. But you get in the box, little Puma SGB, warranty card, and whatever other stuff they stuff down in there. Puma is a German company, but like a lot of companies, I think they had to offshore some of the labor and assembly. But it's, I'm big on a lot of the Chinese knives. I think they're good. So this has the Stag handle. So let's go over the outside of it first. You can see a little bit where the pins are. So the polishing job, not quite as seamless. You can not really tell where the pins are on this one. Whereas there you can see just a faint outline of some of it. And there's a little bit of that polishing grit. The black has gotten into the seam. So you do see it there. As a lanyard hole, not happy about that. I think it ruins the aesthetic, and I don't use a lanyard. But otherwise, let's go through it. The transitions are nice. I can feel a little bit of a lip. I mean, we're talking almost nothing there. On the corners, no sharp edges. Feels good there. I feel that edge just a tiny bit, but nothing to worry about. The polishing does seem pretty smooth. It is pretty well done here. The back spacer, this is all done nice. Again, little gap there. I can feel some of those edges. Where on the Buck, these, I can feel them, but they don't catch the finger as much. And on the Rough Riders, they are even nicer, where they're seamless. You almost can't feel any of the transitions where you're going from grip panel, from scale to liner to lock to liner to scale. You can feel that there, and you can feel a little bit more here. It's not sharp. It's not enough to really catch on anything. I'm just noticing it. If I had a Rough Rider here, the Rough Rider has done a better job of it being just completely flush. So the steel is, what do they call it? Maybe it's written on it. It's German steel. It's like 1.142. It's basically German 440 steel, whether it's A or C, not sure. I'm less of a pocket knife snob than a lot of people who are like, I only will use Magna Cut or this and that. And it's like, yeah, whatever. But it's like, I'm not out in the wilderness. I don't do a lot of camping. I'm typically, around the house or out riding my motorcycles, and I just need a pocket knife. And so, If I have to sharpen it every couple months, whatever. It's not a big deal. So it does say German steel. The Rockwell, I'll put the stats in the description. They do actually proof them. There's a dimple right there where they test the Rockwell hardness. I believe it's 58 to 60 or something, but I'll double check on that. Weight-wise, good bit less, obviously. I mean, this is a much thinner. While being roughly the same size, it's a tiny bit longer. This is almost the perfect size I've been looking for. Oh, it's going to be awesome if this works out. You do have some jimping on the back, which none of the other knives do. They're not enough to use as saw teeth or anything. It's just jimping when you want to choke up. But we are looking at a 3 now they say 3.1, but if you go from the bolster, that's 3 1/4 easily. That's 3 9/16. And then you have a full 3.1 inch cutting. So maybe they're referring to the cutting edge. You got 3.1 inch cutting edge versus 2 3/4. So you get a little bit more edge. And the handle is a little bit longer too. So the handle, I believe, is 4 1/4 versus 4 or something like that. So, or this is 4 1/4 and this might be slightly more. Well, duh, as I'm sitting here trying to guess the stats. Let's just do that. So the handle is only slightly longer. But it is thinner. It's less chunky. So very nice. They've got the Puma medallion in there. It's flush. The Stag feels good. The Prins aren't proud. You don't get perfectly straight edges when one side might be a little thicker or a little bit more swell on the other because you're dealing with a natural product like that. And sometimes they just do it a little differently than when it's wood. You could pretty much just make it flat and seamless. But here you want to keep some of the texturing and some of the Stag. You don't want to, in order to make this side match that side for thinness, you might grind through and then you're just left with the white bone and none of the Stag material. The outer shell that gives you that color and texture. So you do get variation there, but it feels good. It's a nice little knife. Do a quick sharpness test. Kind of. Yeah. That one tore a little bit, but it isn't amazingly sharp. It does do a push test. So I'm not going to say that's a bad edge by any means. It's sharp enough. I'll strop it real quick, but that's definitely a good, decent factory serviceable edge. The edge is a little more fine, not as toothy as the Buck or a Benchmade or something like that. But I've been looking for a lockback that is about the right size. I like the length on this one, but it was just a little bit more girth in the weight in the pocket. I can certainly carry it, but if you're already carrying a gun on that hip, then you got this on that side because I'm right-handed, so they're both going to be there. Then, your shorts and your pants, you start to feel that between a pound or more on a gun, and then you throw another almost half pound on the knife. It starts to weigh down a little bit, and you're very aware of that weight. This feels like it weighs about a third, almost a half less. This is up in the 6 something range. This is going to be around 4 1/4. It's noticeably lighter, and it's noticeably thinner. I was saying on the review yesterday that, hey, if they could just shave off like 1/8 on each side and make it about that wide, it'd be perfect. Well, there you go. That's kind of right in there. Need to put just a little bit of oil in there, but the action is fairly smooth, so it does feel like they did a good job of radiusing that edge that the lock rides on, the lock bar. It's not as highly polished as that one, but it's smooth and that'll polish itself over time of the metal rubbing on it. There is a little bit of front to back lock. I'll say that the Buck has a better lockup front to back. There's very little wiggle. And some knives have it and some don't. It's just the way that it is. It has to do with the tuning. I haven't noticed it like on a lot of the Chinese knives that are non-traditional. They're all done on CNC machines where they're ground and cut down to thousandths of an inch, and that lockup is pretty much tight every time. And with lockbacks, you sometimes get a little bit. My Victorinox has some rocking forward and back. This has more than I would say most, but one of my Rough Riders or one of my Bokers has a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about that. Honestly, if there's a little bit of wiggle, it doesn't matter to me. As long as the lock is strong and the lockup is good, it's a safety thing. If I have to stab into something, I don't care if there's, a 1/4 millimeter of wiggle or wobble to it. Left to right, nice and tight. That's the one I more worry about. The wobble left and right. Not because I feel like it's going to come apart, but to me, it just doesn't feel as well finished. If there's a little bit of wiggle in the lock, I just need to make sure that it keeps it from closing on my fingers if I'm really kind of getting in on something. But it's a nice, good, stabby point. I'm definitely liking it. So I'm going to go ahead and polish it up with a cloth real quick, drop a little bit of oil down there, hit it with an old toothbrush, and just make sure there's no little bits of dirt and debris from the polishing and stuff that got up inside there. But that's a nice little knife. That is right there in that size that I was looking for. Some of my Bokers, some of my Rough Rider Reserves are a little bit too small. My Civivi Rustic Gent is probably the nicest, well-built folding traditional I have other than my MKM, aka Lion Steel Gecko. I'd say that's the nicest one, but those things are well over $200 now. So this one's half the price. You might say, well, that's a lot for 440 steel, but I don't know. It's a cool knife. I like the look of it. It's just enough heft. It's light without being too light, but it's not a tank like this. I think if I was going really heavy use, I'm going to go for the buck. This thing is just solid, but you pay a big weight penalty and it takes up a big chunk of your pocket. It's a very thick knife. I have like it's thicker than like my Ruger LCP Max. I have a carry gun that I can throw in my pocket that, yeah, it's going to weigh more, but it's thinner than this. So this is actually thicker than one of my carry guns. This is kind of right in that Goldilocks spot, 3.1 to 3.25 inch blade. You got a 4 1/4, maybe a little bit more on the handle so you can get a full grip on it. It's a lockback. It looks traditional. I am quite impressed with that. It's not perfect, but traditional knives tend not to be. A lot of traditional knives, they're made the old way and you're hammering things together and peening pins over and stuff, as opposed to everything's cut with a laser or CNC machined, and then you're basically just assembling the knife and you're screwing it together with ball bearings. And it's like, yeah, those knives are going to be finished nicer. The manufacturing techniques are better on modern knives. When you're dealing with materials like bone and there's a human element to polishing and looking at that particular piece of bone and where you want to contour it and how deep you want to go into it. When you're dealing with G10 or carbon fiber or micarta or something, it's uniform through the piece. So you can, it's just a different process. There should be a little bit of play. I can't adjust it. If it's too tight and it's like, what am I going to do? On a modern knife, you'd just adjust the pivot screw, a 1/16 of a turn or something like that. So here it's kind of pressed together and it is what it is. And there's natural variations in the materials. And when you make things by hand, we are humans, there's going to be more of that variation. Whereas when you're just stamping something out in a CNC machinery and a computer's doing it down to thousandths of an inch, you're pretty much going to be dead on balls accurate pretty much every time, unless somebody, drops the ball. So I don't mind that. I don't expect perfection out of a traditional, more hand-built knife. Even if they cut the blades or grind them with CNC, still, these materials really aren't. These are all hand-finished and put together. And so I'm willing to give them a little bit of wiggle room. If there's a little bit of rock or there's a little bit of this or that, that's okay. The knife your granddad had that was completely made by hand, it had all those character flaws. It had all those mild imperfections. Even one that was really well done, if you sat there, you'd find something, you go, that doesn't match up quite. Oh, that pin's a little proud, or oh, that side's a little thicker than the other. Oh, there's a little bit of blade wobble. That's just how folding knives were. If you don't want blade wobble on stuff, go get a fixed blade. Or go get a new modern knife that maybe has tighter tolerances due to, technology and CNC machining. But that's a very nice looking knife. I like the nail nick, unlike the Bokers that you can't really grip, but here you got enough to just grab it anyway. The profile on the blade is nice. I like the swedge. There's a hollow grind here, so it's not too thin behind the edge, but it should be a good little knife. But that is my first Puma. SGB Whitetail. They have a bunch of different sizes. They got full sizes. They got different handles and stuff like that. I was going traditional, and that's the one that was in stock on the Amazons. I'll put a link for it in there. But check them out. It's a nice enough knife. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm gonna carry that one today. Anyway, lunch break's over. I got stuffs to do. We'll talk to you guys later. hit like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.